And welcome to all of you for being here. I'm very excited to share with you some thoughts I have about LinkedIn and personal branding. It's a great time to really be recalibrating everything. You know, we've all been recalibrating all year long, but I wanted to kind of put it in context of my book. So I just want to, again, say thank you and welcome. And what do we have planned? I'm really only going to talk for maybe 15 minutes or so, maybe, I'm not sure, 15 or 20, and give you some perspectives on LinkedIn and personal branding, kind of the latest thinking, and how my thinking has evolved and why it's important, and what are those changes. And then the rest of the time, I'm going to open it up to whatever questions that you have. So by the way, we're going to record the first part of the meeting, and then I'm going to have Craig turn off the recording when we do Q&A, because I want people to just ask anything. Like, I don't want you to be nervous about asking any question. So that's kind of the plan. So we are going to get rolling. I want to say how exciting this is for me to have you all here. And it's a combination. Some of you are readers. Some of you have read my book or thinking about reading my book, and that's great. Some of you are friends, really old friends and new friends. Some of you were actually examples in my book. So, you know, I use a lot of examples in the book. So some of you were examples from, you know, the first edition of the book, and some of you are examples from the second edition. Some of you wrote testimonials for me in the beginning of my book, so thank you for that. Some of you have written reviews on Amazon, so I totally love that. So all of you, no matter who you are, and some of you are brand new to me, that's great. So I'm just so happy. I didn't put this, by the way, I didn't announce this on social media. I only sent this out to the folks that are on my email and people that are, it was just really people on my email list and a couple of close friends, and that was pretty much it. So, all right. So the first thing I want to start off is, why does it matter? And why did I even get into this journey of writing a book about LinkedIn for personal branding? And I started this, well, the first edition was in 2016, and I wanted to be the first person to kind of combine the concepts of personal branding and LinkedIn. There have been other books written about personal branding, and I really wanted to combine that. So I actually remember feeling like I was in a rush. I felt like the pressure was on me, like it was going to be important, and I wanted to get it out there, and I wanted to be first. So that was the first edition. And then it's been 4 years. So surprisingly, or not surprisingly, a lot has changed, not only with LinkedIn, but with my thinking about everything, like everything about personal branding and LinkedIn. A lot of that has changed, which is what we're going to talk about. So the underpinning for the value of all this is the fact that having people look at our profiles is more important than ever. Like every single day, it becomes more important. It's more important than it was in 2016. And, you know, because today's buyers or hiring managers are looking at our profiles. If we're referred, and we want to use LinkedIn to get more referrals, and it can spur more referrals, definitely. So to me, it's become increasingly more urgent to get the message out. Now, this is what the first book looked like in 16. You might say, wait a minute, it looks the same. Well, I made a conscious decision to keep the fish. And I'll explain it that, you know, really this is just the updated version. There's a lot of blue fish out there, a lot of people that look exactly like us. Maybe they have similar backgrounds, similar experiences, maybe even the same college. But we need to work at creating what is unique about us. So that's where the orange fish comes in. Bringing out those personal elements and the strategic aspects of what's important in our values. And I specifically, by the way, I don't call it a goldfish. I call it an orange fish. I just want to go on record there. So what's funny though, in the first book, I had it on the cover, but I never even talked about it. So in the second one, in my introduction, I actually talk about being an orange fish, right? And I started at some point signing my book saying, be the orange fish. That became what I did. So going back to 16, one of the reasons why it was so important for me, the personal branding and LinkedIn, is I wanted to make sure that this book was about positioning. There's plenty of other books on profile that kind of show you this, click here and click there. And I didn't want that. I wanted something that was how to think about yourself, how to position yourself, how do you distinguish yourself? And it was really important to me that I use a lot of examples. So there's a lot of examples. Now in the second edition, I changed up some of those examples. Some I took out, some I added in, some I had to change because LinkedIn had changed or the focus on the book. And then of course, there's a reader website, which is important because LinkedIn makes so many changes. So there's a whole list of things that have changed, but let me go through kind of what's important. The first thing that, I don't know, this would have surprised me in 2016, but in the new book, I talk about brand voice and authenticity. It didn't even occur to me in 2016. But what's happened in the last 4 years is that everything has changed about how people come across on LinkedIn. And some people complain, they'll say, oh, it's like Facebook, it's too personal. It's really a matter of judgment. And I think that we've now, especially since 2017, when the native videos started, everything changed. We started seeing all the millennials jumping on the bandwagon. They were creating these amazing videos, and they were really personal. And we also started seeing people with really authentic text posts posting. So it changed. And I think for those of us that are older than millennials, at first it was a take back, but I really believe that, it's changed us all. And I've definitely moved more authentic and personal. However, and I talk about this in the book, that I think we have to draw a line. So some of the things that I see being talked about, I would never in a million years talk about on LinkedIn, probably not on Facebook either. Just there's too personal. So there's folks that are way out there. So you have to sort of decide, how do you bring in a personal element and stay professional? That's the perspective that I take. So that was the first thing that's really changed that I wanted to mention, that I talk about throughout the book. The other thing, one of the reasons people struggle with LinkedIn, their profile, is how do I write about myself? How do I create this? And LinkedIn changed. It used to be called Summary, so now it's called the About. So I had to change that throughout the book, and I put in a couple new examples, and I created this 5H format, which is in the book about the section about the About section. And so these are the elements, the H's. It starts with hook, and that means how are you hooking people in? Like what kind of interesting starting point, whether it's a story or whether it's a statistic or something really relevant and interesting to grab attention. The second part is, how are you helping? Like what do you do to help? The third part is, how are you human? Like, what do you do when you're not working? Like, is there a little piece of something personal that you can share? Hot words is my way of saying keywords. And then hello is basically, how do you contact me? So you'll see these elements throughout. In fact, I'm hoping after this session, you might make sure you're connected with me. I'm sure most of you are, but if you're not connected with me, or look at my About section, because I definitely have these H's. So again, that's part of what I changed in the book as well. We also saw a change in the last 4 years, and actually these two, the headline and the About, just changed within the last 6 months. And the headline is now longer, it's 220 characters. So where I used to have 2 lines of headline, I now have 3. I could have 4, but I didn't, it looked too overwhelming to me. I just thought it was just too thick. So I have about 159 characters, right, in my headline. So that's something new. And I also, from a COVID perspective, I tweaked my entire profile to be more focused on my virtual work. And if you read my profile, you'll see my headline has changed, my about has changed, all really from a COVID perspective. The experience section. So I liked a lot of the parts I had in the experience section from the original book. However, I felt there were some things missing. Now, of course, with experience now, we can nest our experiences. If we've worked at one company for several years, we can now nest those so that they all show up under the logo. So that was new. But I wanted to give some feedback, some advice, some tips to these three groups of people in addition. So portfolio career. We are seeing a huge amount of people that have multiple careers. These are folks that are, they might be a notary and a wedding officiant, and they're doing all these things. Or some of my friends are like authors and speakers and consultants or trainers. So lots of people, and even surprisingly, even people that are corporate employees, they're doing something on the side. So it's become very prevalent. So I definitely wanted to address the portfolio career in the book in terms of how you position yourself there. I also wanted to give some specific feedback for job seekers and for salespeople. So before in that chapter, it was really much more generic. It gave a lot of examples, but it didn't go into these three topics. So that's what I've added in that chapter. Also, in addition to lots of other new features, these are some of the other, a lot of features that came out. And in fact, I have to tell you, my all-time favorite feature on the LinkedIn profile came out this year, about 4 or 5 months ago. Number one favorite, really of all time. I just adore it. And that is called Featured, a feature called Featured. And you can now go in and you can add a post, an article, your links or media, and it's very prevalent right on your right in the body of your profile. So I've added my books, I've added my YouTube. So if you're a speaker, some of you are on here. I saw the names. I know some of you are speakers. You could add your speaker reel, which I have on mine. You could have you doing a video of you doing a workshop. Could be an article that you wrote. It could be to your company website. And again, LinkedIn will pull in the image. There's a lot of possibilities of what you can do here. It could be a presentation or PDF. It could, and the big news, I guess, was that they allowed links. Like when I first saw the feature, I thought, well, this is great, but I was blown away that this allows links. We can go outside of LinkedIn, which was an amazing feature enhancement. Okay, so in the original book, I had a chapter after the profile. I had a chapter on groups and a chapter on company pages. I still have the chapter on company pages, which I improved and enhanced, but instead of talking about groups, I repositioned the chapter to be LinkedIn networking and community. And then within that chapter, I talk about groups. And within that chapter, so I would say over the last 4 years, that's another big area of excitement and evolution, which is the idea of building community. And I'm such a believer in it. In fact, for many of you who maybe saw my TEDx talk last year, it was, and some of you folks I know that are on here actually helped me with my TEDx. So shout out to all my friends out there, my speaker friends who helped me with this. But the TEDx was LinkedIn community, a superpower hiding in plain sight. And if you are, really looking to enhance your LinkedIn, you might want to take a look at that video. It's 11 minutes. It's a free video. It's all about the concept of building a strategic network that's powerful. So that chapter has been repositioned. All right, the big C. I even have a C in my book, a big C in my book. And this has to do with content. And I talk about, so in 2016, I did have a couple chapters on content, which I felt was so revolutionary back then. But we're now looking at it now, it's so completely out of date. Back then, I talked about how to share how to share an article, because I remember as a LinkedIn trainer, everyone would come to me and say, well, how do I share an article? That's all they wanted to do. How do I share an article? So I actually have the original book has a chapter on how to share an article, how to find it, how to share it. So that had to go. The new chapter is now 6 chapters on content. So massive focus on content. And what I did was the main 3 thrusts of content for me were actually all C words. So it's creating, it's curating, and commenting. Those are the 3 main things that I wanted to talk about. And so creating is where people heads are now. They want to be creators, right? Creating a post, creating an article, creating a video. So there's creating. Curating, which is finding and sharing, is still something that's relevant, but it just doesn't have the same juice as far as the algorithm. So you might, if that's all you're doing, it's pretty hard to get a lot of traction. And then there's commenting, which is, anyone who knows me knows that I'm a commenting freak. I don't know if that's the right word. I love to comment. And I even talk in the book about 80-20 rule, about 80% of your time you want to be engaging with other people's content, because you're building relationships. So when I go to do a post, I'm usually pretty fortunate people jump into it because I've probably engaged with their post, right? So they're more likely to jump in and engage with mine. I feel like it's just more natural for them. So that's why these were so important. So commenting is huge. And in fact, in the last year, I've really ramped up my commenting. And in the last year, I've gained over 10,000 followers, mainly from commenting. I mean, some of it is from creating posts, but these are not connections, these are followers. So it really made me realize that the power of engaging, building those relationships, and commenting. All right. So these are all the different types of content. And again, I talk about all of these in the book. It varies. So there's a
We're recording this call for better note-taking, follow-up, and training purposes.
Okay, I'm not sure. I just heard a recording. All right. So the different types of content. So there's a couple chapters that are generic about content, like advice about content. But then there's also chapters that go a little deeper into each one of these, and trying to give a perspective on how to make it valuable. So that's the important thing. How do you take that content and make it valuable? Hashtags have definitely changed. So with hashtags now, 4 years ago, hashtags weren't really something that we were focused on from a LinkedIn perspective. And now hashtags are become very important from a search perspective and being found and being visible. But if you're coming over from the Instagram world, we don't want to take those Instagram habits of hashtags where you've got dozens of hashtags. Instead, you want to use 3 or 4 or 5 hashtags in a LinkedIn post to be the most effective. So that was different. So here's another thing that it kind of relates back to what I talked about originally, is the brand voice and being authentic. Never in a million years would I have thought that I would be talking about emojis. I didn't like them. I thought they were unprofessional. That my mind has changed. Again, everything for me has evolved in the last 4 years. And I really think, and for me, the emojis have become something that I'm really interested in only this year, believe it or not. So, and I know a lot of, when I do some of my training classes with companies, when we talk about this at the end, I always ask people about emojis. And there's always a few people that say, no, it's not for me. I don't like it. So it is a personal preference. And I do not recommend using emojis in your name field or in your title or your headline. No. But I do think a small amount of emojis that you use in a post or in your about section is great, right? Or maybe in your descriptions. So that has really been a change for me. And that kind of ties into that brand voice, being a little friendlier, a little more playful, a little more interesting, a little more visually appealing, because we know that we want to be visually appealing, right? That's important. So here's an example of a post I have in there. So instead of, I do a lot of posts about LinkedIn features. So this particular feature was, you know, that there's a new, you can now pronounce your name on your profile. So rather than just saying, here's a new feature, I made it a little bit of a personal story about the fact that my maiden name was kind of hard to pronounce, and how that this feature is important for many people that have difficult to pronounce names. And you can see in the post, I just use a couple of emojis. I have 3 hashtags, and it's pretty simple. It's a text post. So that was just one of the examples I used sort of for a post. All right, in the video chapter, rather than giving out specs or how-tos, it was more about how do you overcome what your hesitations are about video. So I have a little thing on how do you overcome video paralysis. And I definitely give examples of what you can video and explain the difference between a native video, and I explain like the different types of video that you can do on LinkedIn. And I also, I have this chart which talks about the paths you can take. So if if you're coming into this where you've used a lot of YouTube, it might be a little different than if you've never done a video. So I have a little chart about the different paths. All right, the reader. So that was, I hope you enjoyed hearing kind of like my thought process about the book and how it's changed. And there is a reader resource website, which used to be just like a website, and now it's actually built into a course platform. And Craig helped me with this, so thank you, Craig. But basically, if you sign up for it, you are, the first part is I welcome you. And there's some videos in here. All this is free. It's like anyone who reads the book can just go in here. There's some videos, some interviews I've done. There's all the chapters are divided out. So every single chapter, you can log into that chapter and, for the whole book. And once you get into the chapter, you'll see on the top, it just lists what is the topic of that chapter in the book. And then all the ones below are links. So if I read, this is education chapter, and let's just say now I want to know how do I remove my education or something, then I can click down here into this reader resource, and I can click and see the instructions from LinkedIn. So I wanted to make this more the how-to part. There's also additional resources for people that want to spend more time with me and work with me in different ways. So that's kind of also part of the reader resources. One of the things that I'll mention is the reviews have been great, and I love getting reviews. For those of you that have done a review for me, I am so grateful. You wouldn't believe it. In fact, Alex is on, and he was my number 100 review. I'm constantly looking to get new ones because it's very competitive. So thank you for considering doing that. Now, I think most everyone here is connected to me. And if you're not, I wanted to invite you to please do connect with me. When you come to my page, it says follow, but what you do is click on more, and then you click on connect. And I'd love to be connected to everyone here for sure. And now, thank you for letting me present kind of all the different thought processes, because it's everything, that we talked about, whether it's the content or the about section, the brand voice, the experience, all of that has really made a difference for me. It was really important for me to get this out this year. So that's my formal part of my talk with you. I want to now if we could just turn off the recording.